Now we need two more methods to get the user profile image, right? So this is to update the image, right? But you remember there's a URL on every user that's pointing to the location of their image, and we need to be able to handle that because since it's a URL, the actual string on that user that represents their image is a URL. So whenever it's loaded in the browser, by default, the browser recognizes URL and it's gonna just send a request. So we need to handle this request and then generate the image. So we're gonna handle a get mapping here, and we're gonna pass in a path, and this is going to be let's do, so that's gonna be slash. So we have to map it exactly what it is on the user. So if you remember on the user, it's like user image and then the username and the file name, right? So let's do image, and then we pass in the username and then the file name. So username, and then the file name. So for this, we have to also specify the what this method produces. So we're gonna do produces, and in here we're gonna set this equal to images or image JPEG and value. Okay, so that's why we have to introduce this here so that we can make the distinction between what this is, what this value here is, and what this value here is. So if we didn't have this, like we didn't have this like this, we wouldn't have to be specific with the path. We could have just said, we could have just do it like this. But since we need to add something else, then we have to introduce what this is, which is the path, so that we can be very distinctive, so that we don't confuse Spring. So here I'm gonna import this. This is supposed to be coming from media type from Spring Framework, okay? So not util, supposed to come from image JPEG value. And I'm gonna import that. And if you take a look, it's just image JPEG, right? So we can also add PNG in GIF, but we know that when we save an image, if you go back into the implementation, we know that when we save an image, we give him this extension, JPEG, okay, which is JPEG. So we're only telling the resource is returning JPEG, okay? But we could have added this and this as well if we wanted. And the only thing we would have to do is to, instead of having this like this by itself, we would just have to introduce curly braces like this, and then we can pass in another one like just like GIF or something. Okay, so we don't need to do that now because we know we're only returning JPEG values. So I'm gonna undo all of that. So now that we have this, we can continue with the body of the method. So again, public, and so the very interesting thing is when this is called, it's supposed to return the image, right? And when we read the image, we're gonna be reading the bytes of the image, and we have to return those bytes, which represent the image, and the browser will be able to parse it and then render the image. So here we're gonna say this is returning an array of bytes like this, okay? And we're gonna call it get profile image, right? And then for here, since we have all of those path parameters, we have to get them. So I'm just gonna copy this right here, and then I'm gonna pass it in here two times, since I need to get two things, which is the username. So username is gonna be a string, and username, don't need that ID. Oops, username. Okay, so get the username, and we also need to get the file name right here. So I'm gonna pass this in, copy this, file name. Okay, so we get the username that we're expecting in the path, and then the file name. So now that we have those, we continue with the body of the method. So all we have to do here is to go into that specific folder, read that file, read all the bytes of that file, and then return it to the browser. And you're gonna see how this is like so handy. So here we're gonna do return, and we're gonna call the files class, so files, and of course we need to do read all bytes, and then we just have to pass in the path. So the path, to get the path, we're just gonna call in paths, and we're gonna call get, so that we can get the actual path. And then here all we have to do is to pass in the user folder. So user folder, which is the default or the base path. So user folder, right? And then once you get the user folder, we can go to that specific folder for that user, which is gonna be the username. So we pass in the username, right? And then once we get the username, we can add a / so that we can go to that file name. So we're gonna do plus and then /, so forward _ / oops, like this. And then once we inside that folder, then we can look for that specific file name, which we're getting from the request. And we're gonna see how this is a little bit abstract right now, but you're gonna see how this is gonna work in a minute. So here I'm just gonna import the user folder which we created. So it's gonna come from our constant class, and then the / as well coming from our constant class. Okay, so let's look at this for a second. So it's gonna go into the user home folder, right? And it's gonna go into support portal. So I'm gonna just copy this just so I can make sure you guys understand. Let's go back to the resource. So this part right here, which is creating the path, it's gonna be like this. So if I can give you a visual representation. So it's gonna be the user home folder, whatever server the application is running is, whatever, it doesn't matter. So user folder, support portal, and then user, right? And then after user, which is all of this, right? Support portal, user folder, it's gonna pass in the username. So for instance, if the username is Rick, this is gonna be Rick. That's the folder. And then inside Rick, we'll have something like this, rick.jpg. Okay, so this is gonna read all the bytes from this path right here, and then it's gonna return those bytes to the browser, and the browser will be able to parse those bytes and then return the folder. And the reason we're getting this error here is because this returned an IO exception. It throws an IO exception. Okay, so that's what this is doing. Next, we're gonna be adding the a very similar one, but to get the image from the actual RoboHash. So this is for when there has been a selected profile picture added on the user. So it's gonna just go into that path and then get that user folder. But for the when they didn't pass in any image, right, in their profile, so we have to give them a specific profile using the RoboHash API. So we have to call that API and then retrieve that image and then parse that image and then send that image back to the user. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next video.